Welcome once again, yet another episode. And today we have a friend and a colleague here to share with us. I would not mention his name like I always do, and he will introduce himself briefly. But I just want you to take a seat and then just be with us for this moment. So first of all, to begin with, can you please introduce yourself and tell those watching who you are?
So, my name is Timothy Jojo Mamaglo Mensah, and I am a Ghanaian who's studying a PhD in education here at the University of Glasgow. And I started my education in KNUST, started with political studies, and then I enrolled in the Erasmus Mundus program, Education Policies for Global Development, at Autonomous University of Barcelona, University of Glasgow, and University of Cyprus. And right after that, I started my PhD program. I'm currently focused on education for peace building, teacher education, social justice, decolonization, education policy. Those are my current research interests. But in my PhD, I specifically focus on education for peace building in ethno-political conflict zones. And my specific focus is on northern Ghana, Kusok, Boku area. And so my research is trying to focus on how education can optimize peace building in that area. So that's just about me.
Well, there you have it. These are very complex words, if you ask me, but I understand. We will try and tone it down, and then
We will.
people would understand what Timothy is talking about. And also, I think one of the takeaway here is it doesn't matter where you are coming from. It doesn't matter where you are born. As you can see, Timothy recounts his journey, and you can always be who you want to be. Just keep dreaming and working hard. You can do it. So Timothy has recounted his journey, and currently he's undertaking a PhD in the University of Glasgow, Scotland. But what really caught I've seen Timothy on the social media platforms. I've not really engaged him that much, but what caught my attention is his research on rethinking and decolonizing peace education in Ghanaian secondary schools, exploring teachers' perspectives. And here he recounts, the need for peace education. I think is very, very informative. And there is also an analytical part of it where he would share with us. So, Timothy, I wouldn't want to delve much into this research. I've read it thoroughly, I think twice, if I'm not mistaken. And I hope that our audience also take one or two cues out of it. And I hope that this part is a little bit, the research there is super depth. And I hope that those with some interest would join Timothy and a few others to research more into this area. So, Timothy, the floor is yours. In 15 minutes, how would you present your project to our audience to take or learn from it?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Derek. So this research started somewhere in 2022. So I started this project as part of my master's thesis. And within that framework, I was supposed to produce a body of work. And this is part of the body of work that was produced within that time. And the reason why I even started this whole project in the first place was because I was thinking about how peace education is in Ghana because during my master's program, I'd written an essay on comparative analysis of peace education in Somalia and in Ethiopia. And then I was wondering in my home country, what is peace education and how is peace education being enrolled in secondary schools or even in the education system? So I was keen to know about it. So I started looking at peace even in Ghana. And then when I looked at a lot of these international ratings, Ghana was pegged high, especially as compared to its neighboring countries. So Ghana is higher than Nigeria, higher than Cote d'Ivoire, higher than Togo. But intricately, when you look at the fabric of Ghanaian society, you see that there's some form of violence, some form of conflict that has been neglected. And in practical terms, we call this negative peace and positive peace. So negative peace is just the absence of direct violence, which you might say is predominant in Ghana. There's no large-scale conflicts, large-scale war. But then positive peace is the real thing, where there are certain form of violence in structures, in cultures, ethnic stereotyping, institutional marginalization, and some form of marginalization in society. And so I was trying to find out how these things are embedded even in the education system and how the education system is trying to help to curb these issues. And that's how come I started this program. Indeed, decolonization is a big term. And so in practical terms, it's just trying to erase the slate of something that has been written. And so I use a typical Ghanaian concept like Sankofa. I think everybody knows what Sankofa is. Going back to your roots to take up what is good and using that to improve the future. And so decolonization is going back to take what is good to help. Indeed, it doesn't mean that everything that is back is good, but you have to look at how to take what is good and help. And so I was looking at our indigenous Ghanaian society and how oral tradition throughout the years can help us to improve peace education. So when you look at the research, I did a review of different Edinkra symbols, some proverbs from the Mole Dagbani ethnic group, and some from the Ewe ethnic group and Ga Adangbe ethnic group. These, even though from diverse ethnic groups, shows that even in Ghana, we have a common understanding of what peace means, what harmony means, and what unity means to us. And so throughout these things, I didn't want to just go and interview education stakeholders like people in the Ministry of Education and then talk to them. I wanted to talk to teachers for specifically. And I think around the time that I started this research, there was a big buzz about the Achibota student who had his dreads and was denied entry into Achimota in the first place. But when he went to court, he was given admission. Within that time, I was following the discourse around teachers who were agreeing with the institutional marginalization of these students, this Rastafarian student. And so I wanted to know from a teacher's perspective what they thought about peace education and what the understanding is. If they even had throughout their education, they had some form of teacher education on peace and peace, which informed their decision to stand against the students and even against all other things. And also from 2020, from the year 2020 to 2022, you realize that there have been a lot of vandalism in a lot of secondary schools, pockets of them. And even most recently in 2023, there were students from the north girls who insulted the president on TikTok, trying to threaten the president. All these things are some form of violence that are undertone in the Ghanaian society. And so my research was trying to find that. And so in simple terms, we were looking at how prepared, equipped, and supported teachers are to teach peace, especially in using Ghana's indigenous perspectives. And we're also looking at what factors hinder or help them to educate students on peace education and what measures can we implement to effectively help peace education in Ghanaian secondary schools. And throughout these things, there were some fascinating outcomes. Within these fascinating outcomes, teachers said that there were 4 themes that they saw were problems that were impeding their role in teaching peace education. One, even before I even go there, let's talk about how prepared, equipped teachers are to teach peace education. So, some of the teachers we spoke to indicated that they didn't have an idea of peace education. Some also said they've heard of peace education, but not much. Some of them also said that they had some form of training in peace education. And within the teachers we spoke to, we found a trend that the teachers who went to teacher training colleges before going to the university to do top up, before teaching the secondary schools, had some form of peace education, which means that the teacher training colleges, which is now the College of Educations, had some form of peace education embedded in their training. But for those who went straight to the university and then became teachers, didn't have that form of training. And so that was a disparity because it means that there's a form of difference between the curriculum of teacher education in College of Education and that of those of the university. And that was also one thing that we unraveled. Another thing too is that some teachers said that within their framework, the education directorate organizes workshops for teachers on peace education, but some of them are not free. And so they would rather not voluntarily pay for a conference or a workshop. So they would rather opt out. And so that was what we found out. But when we looked at what factors support them, they mentioned that the Ghanaian society itself is a peaceful society. When you look at how Ghana has transitioned from independence till now, and even with us as Ghanaians, we see ourselves as the beacon of peace and a beacon of democracy. And so the teachers think that with that understanding, that has helped them to teach peace education because students have a fair understanding, even within their environment, they understand it. But on the contrary, they also said that they had issues, one which is home training. And the teachers indicated that sometimes the home training that the students get forms part of the problems they face in school because the hours that students spend in school, it's somehow minimal compared to what they spend at home. So if the training they get is not commensurate to what the teachers are doing in school, then it's just an exercise in futility. And that was one of the problems. And even though we don't agree that we should be placing blames on parents and home training because every student has a unique experience at home, we think this is something we can look into. Another thing too is about systemic issues stemming from how policies of education are being enrolled, teacher education policies are being enrolled without factoring the interest and then the input of teachers themselves. And so teachers mentioned that the advisory role or advisory role of teachers that was in place over the years has been taken away. So teachers are just tutors, placeholders, just trying to teach and then go because they can't impact any discipline into these students. So they feel that this is one of the systemic issues that is swaying them from teaching peace education. Another thing too is about the curriculum. Teachers feel that the curriculum, even for their teacher education and for the students' education, is also another problem because they are not able to bank on the curriculum to teach peace education because if the curriculum is skewed to other things, there's not enough input to help students within this framework. And that's also another thing on its own. But lastly, we also realize that colonization or this colonization I'm talking about is also a problem because then teachers would say that the colonial legacies that have been left over decades, even in their school environment, is one thing that is also preventing them. When you look at the Achimota case, for instance, this is a school that has been there even before independence and has held on to some legacies, especially in terms of how they dress, how they should look, And these legacies are being championed even now by people who are in the society, Ghanaians themselves, championing these legacies that have been passed on. And so they feel these colonial legacies are also impeding peace education in Ghana. So throughout this, this is what we found out. And we think that this is a good starter point for further discussion on peace education in Ghana. And also to help policy advisors, stakeholders, and teacher unions to come together to have a consensus, try to help to improve upon peace education in secondary schools, because within this framework, we need all hands on deck to improve on peace education. And I think it is on the back of these experience that I transitioned to my PhD to work on education for peace building. So I think this is a whole framework for all of us that we can all bank on to improve on the Ghanaian society. We are all Ghanaians and we love Ghana, don't we?
Definitely. We are all Ghanaians and we love Ghana. And I think this is a very great way to start. And we have rethinking and decolonizing peace education. I mean, for me, the takeaway here is we have issues, you call it systemic problems, which is more of an institutional challenge in policy making. And of course, the organizational challenges within these classrooms, and also colonial echoes, which has been a problem in localizing how we deal with certain issues, critical issues from in our respective countries, especially those coming from Africa and Ghana to be specific. So basically, that is the research that I read about. It's been summarized in a way that you and I can take one or two out of it, but I would advise you, I'll put the research link up there so that you can also follow. I would also put it in the description below so you can also follow it and read it carefully. It has a lot of information that I think we've not really paid attention to. There are so many conflicts in Ghana, if you ask me. And we have currently the Ashanti and Bono issues, emerging, should I say emerging, or has been there for a while. We also have the everlasting Nkonya and Alavanyo, which has been there. We have the Dagbon chieftaincy conflicts. And also the Ga Dangme community, they also have their own issues. I believe there are several or countless conflicts in the state. And you see, our educational curriculum should be structured or it should be structured to mimic what is happening on the ground. It should be localized. Let me use for the use of the right words, to be localized in a way that people learn from the context where they come from. And I think this research posits it correctly. And for those who are very curious and want to be academics, this is a way to start. Get yourself a chair, sit down, and then read carefully. Reading won't kill you. Anyway, let me ask this question. So, significantly, if somebody asks, what is the how do we call it? The takeaway from this research. What exactly do you want to um pass on to the people of Ghana so far as this research is concerned?
So I think the main takeaway is that from the outside, looking into Ghana, everything is kosher. But when you look at the deep issues in Ghana, not everything is balanced, or there are certain challenges with conflicts which are structural and cultural. And I think we've overlooked this over the years. But most importantly, I think if we focus on peace education or focus our education to help peace building, we'll be able to help to curb all these societal injustices, marginalization, ethnic stereotyping in quotes. And these things sometimes start as jokes and then they end up in some form of violence. But I think we should look at our education as a form of remedy to help the Ghanaian society or to improve upon the Ghanaian society. And I think this is just a starting point. This research might be the first of many other people can also take it up. And even you who works in sports, there's even sports for peace education. And so these things are things that we can use as a form of peace education and to help education for peace building. And I think I, for one, have fallen in love with peace, education for peace building, and all these things. And so I currently work on a podcast with my with the person I wrote with, who's also acts as my supervisor and my mentor. So we both host a podcast called the Peace Education Chat Podcast, which has 14 episodes now, and you can check us out. We are on
What's
Spotify,
the name?
Peace Ed Chat Podcast. So we try to link practitioners, the work of practitioners, to researchers, and to break down researchers' work to practitioners. So we bridge the gap between these two people to help the environment, just like you are doing, and also create space for people to understand the work that we are doing without the flamboyant terms that we
Yeah.
use in research. So yeah.
It's very, very important. And peace is part of my research work, but I focus more on the sport for development and peace. I think I've covered about four, if I'm not mistaken, three or four articles on sports and peace, particularly from writing with a colleague from Pakistan. And those regions have
Yeah.
they have their own issues, and we're seeing how sports play a role. We know there are sport for development and peace organizations over there, but as you mentioned, the theory is far-fetched from the practical. Um, from praxis, let me put it that way. So it's very important for us to to take these things very serious. So without taking much time, I want to say thank you so much for sharing. And I hope you out there will be inspired by Timothy. For those of you taking PhD, always take the chance to write something. It's very hard to sit in a room alone and keep everything that you write to yourself. For me, it's the best way to show, what to show progress, and is the best way to also exercise your article writing skills. I did that. For me, I did a PhD by publication, so I had no option. You have to publish. But for those doing monograph, I also feel that you have to take the chance to publish, hone your article writing skills, and you'll be good. So on
I
that note, you have any last words before we close?
Yeah, my last words will be on the publishing bit. That publishing is a highly gratifying process, even though it's very daunting, especially when you get your corrections and then you see the red lines and everything, and you believe in your work. When you see the final result, I think is highly gratifying. And so I would entreat people who are doing research to also publish, because it helps other people to know your work and create a convivial society where we can share our ideas and to help to bridge the gap between what we are doing, working on a thesis and just keeping it on the shelf, but also bringing it to the world for them to understand what you are doing and to also improve society. So that is the main aim of our research duty. So I think
Yes.
that's the best for us.
Yes, and in addition, publish in credible journals. If you are not sure, consult with your library department, and they'll help you know the credible journals with impact factors that are very good, or with good indices. Let me put it that way. When you publish with these journals, you are sure that your research would have a, wider reach. There is no need to publish with a journal that is not credible. That's like having a shortcut to success. So on that note, I would say thank you very much, Timothy, and I hope to have you another time when you do have another publication highlighting important factors or areas in Ghana. I appreciate you a lot, and please don't stop publishing.
Thank you for the
Keep it
opportunity.
going. Yes, my pleasure. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.